Figure it out in the future. All right, and we're live. Welcome everybody to Notable Quotables, your new favorite podcast. Today I have my guest with me, a very good friend of mine, a renowned spiritual life coach, very dear friend, Shula. Hello, Shula.
Hi, thank you
Hi.
for having me.
My pleasure. You want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a spiritual life coach, I'm an energy healer, a yoga teacher, and it's really my mission and my passion to just help uplift the world, to help people heal,
Mm-hmm.
to help them live more joyful, abundant, genuinely happy lives. And I love it. I love sharing it with the world.
That is beautiful. You want to give us a little bit about how you got into this kind of this part of the world, this part of your journey? How did you step foot into it? As much as you want to go in depth.
Well, the universe always works in just really, really fun ways. And both
Mm-hmm.
things kind of were presented to me, both teaching yoga, where one
Mm-hmm.
time the actual teacher of the class didn't show up and the sub didn't show up.
Mm-hmm.
And some people in the back of the class were just like, hey, Shula, you want to teach the class? And I'm like, my pleasure. I'd be
Yeah.
happy to. And people loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was very clear, like, hey, this is my first class teaching, but I want to share the gift of yoga with you. And as far as life coaching,
Mm-hmm.
way before I actually even knew what a life coach was, somebody messaged me on Facebook and she said, Shula, you're so positive, you're so upbeat,
Mm-hmm.
you have such good knowledge, would you coach me?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, coach you how? Like, my first came to mind was
Yeah.
sports, and I'm not, not
Yeah.
really a
Yeah.
sports person. And she's like, oh, like a life coach, like you kind of help me bridge the gap from where I am to where I want to go and share your knowledge with me and
Mm-hmm.
help me see what I can't see on my own. And I'm like, sure, I would love to. And she told a couple of people, and I just
Mm-hmm.
found a lot of passion and joy and fulfillment in it. And then I got several certifications through various programs
Mm-hmm.
and continuing on my journey.
That is really beautiful. Yeah, it's just like you. It's almost like you were literally just chosen by the universe. Like, hey, we want you to come do this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. That is awesome. All right. I think I will give you the honor of sharing the quote that you brought to the table with us first.
Okay, awesome. So the quote that really came to me
Mm-hmm.
to share today is by Rumi, a man whose name was Jalal. Sorry for the mispronunciation. Ad-Din Muhammad Rumi.
Mm-hmm.
He was a Persian poet, a Sufi mystic in the 13th century, and he really started writing poems and quotes out of the pain and grief of losing his best friend. So it's really interesting
Mm-hmm.
how this experience transformed him and helped him be such an amazing spiritual teacher
Right.
to the world at large. And the quote from Rumi is, your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all barriers within yourself you've built against it. One more time. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all barriers within yourself that you've built against it.
I think that's amazing. That really resonated with me. Do you wanna go into what you think that means or what that means for you?
Sure. I think a lot of us are seeking for love in
Mm-hmm.
different ways. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
in partnership, maybe
Mm-hmm.
in friendship,
Mm-hmm.
maybe with children.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, what this really means is that the love is always available to us.
Yeah.
My personal belief is that we are love. The essence of us is love. The essence of every being is love, as we are in the image of our creator, God, goddess, source creator, whatever word or energy resonates with
Mm-hmm.
each of our wonderful listeners.
Right.
And we're in the essence of love. So we
Mm-hmm.
just get to tune into who we truly are to experience love.
Right.
How about you?
Yeah, I think that I really, really like the quote. I think it's so eloquently put. I think for me, it speaks to, yeah, this idea that I think we get stuck in a scarcity mindset, kind of a survival mode mindset that is very often associated with things like monetary or material wealth. But I mean, more importantly, at least in my opinion, is when we get stuck in that in terms of, the idea of something like love. Like, there's a finite amount of love, there's a finite amount of available partners or friends out there, and I got to go get and secure mine and hide them and lock them away from others, and I think we get more in that mindset when we're having trouble in relationships or finding relationships, regardless of whether they're like intimate partner relationships or just friendly relationships. But I think that it's kind of it's a cycle that we don't see often without outside input of I'm getting in this mindset, and that's what's deterring these relationships from being able to come into me, because you're resonating in a place of fear, in a place of lack. You're not acknowledging the abundance, and I think that often we have these barriers up inside of us that kind of prevent us from getting the love that we want. I saw this great quote the other day. Actually, it was kind of similar. It said, I believe it was, they fear love because it creates a world they cannot control. And I think that applies to maybe like the they, as well as just like us inside of ourselves. Like, it's very scary. If you think about something as powerful as love, like it can make you do things that you never thought you were capable of, for better and for worse. And that's scary. It's very scary.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, the idea of seeking it, because if we're seeking something, that would imply that you don't have it already.
Mm-hmm.
And as opposed to really tuning in to what is available to you, the essence of who you truly are.
Right.
And when we think about some of those barriers, you mentioned some really good ones. I think a lot of it can come down to worthiness too. A lot of us may not actually feel worthy of giving and receiving love from another person or to ourselves. And that's such a self-imposed barrier that a lot of people have learned, maybe from their childhood or from other people around them.
No, I agree. I think that's a really big one, the worthiness. I think that I think that's probably the biggest thing that keeps people from succeeding in general. I think it's called like imposter syndrome, when somebody starts to like reshape themselves and become someone new, and they're kind of going off on a new venture, and they kind of get this internal dialogue of like, I'm pretending to be something I'm not, which comes from, I mean, you're not pretending, you're creating this new character that you are. It's not a false character. It's just one that's still in the making. It's not the character you've always been. It's not the programming you've always had. So there's part of you that's like, oh, well, this isn't real. Well, it's becoming real. It's real as you make it. But I would say definitely for me, I know as a part of my own journey, that kind of worthiness in terms of all facets of life and love and relationship has been a big part of that. Accepting that I do feel worthy of abundance and relationships and things like that, and just kind of getting into a place where it's like, even if I feel like I can't always connect with the people around me, that I will attract the right ones. They may be far and few, but quality over quantity, I think, is very important.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think, that sort of attracting, depending where our vibrational set point is, can actually be some of the barriers that we have built up when we are not in a healed state, and we are in a state that we still feel unworthy, or we've become accustomed to certain treatment from other people. Maybe they even call some of that treatment love. And then until we do that inner work on ourselves and we do heal ourselves, we are going to continue, or we may not always continue to attract people that are going to reflect our beliefs about ourselves and how we see ourselves, for good or worse, and really taking a look at like how we view ourselves and how we want to give and receive love, and just thinking what does love even mean, because it has so many different meanings and connotations to other people, to each individual.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, I know for me, one of my favorite quotes about love, one that I was maybe going to have on another episode, but it just ties in so well now, is, John Mayer in the song "Love Is a Verb," he says love is a verb, and I remember hearing that song at a very young age, and I wouldn't say I'd ever necessarily been in love at that point, or even really thought about the idea of like what is love. But I just remember hearing that song and just like really resonating, and like it's one of those things where even still today, maybe like 10 years later, I'm still thinking about that quote and that idea that love is a verb. And as I've gone throughout my like philosophical journey, I find that resonates the most. Like love is the actions one takes upon whatever the object or person or idea is that they love. It's showing that care. It's showing that affection. It's a doing, but also a being. Just being in. If you love being like let's say ambitious, like if you love that state of being, then you seek out or put yourself into scenarios where you can be ambitious, where you can thrive in that way because you love it, you love that state, you give it attention, energy, and focus. And I think it's the same thing like with a partner. You give them that love in whatever way your love language is and whatever way their love language is, and you kind of meet in the middle.
Right. Which could be another beautiful conversation about giving and receiving love in different love languages, and I think there's starting to become a lot more beautiful awareness about that. But some people may not even actually know what that is either. And I think that sometimes it's really interesting how you mentioned like the doing and the being, and sometimes there's a big disconnect between what we're feeling, what we're doing. And that could play into self-sabotage, that could play into limiting beliefs, things that we're believing to be true. It could be, just sometimes as humans, we desire to do something without actually being able to do it. And that, to me, that really ties into the quote. That's a barrier that we place within ourselves, that disconnect between the feeling and the doing. And sometimes it comes when we don't really love ourselves. It can be really hard to give that love to someone else in a way that they feel loved by.
I agree. I think that is one scenario where it's not like love is ever finite, but it has to start at home.
Right.
It's like if you're not giving the proper amount of love to yourself, I mean, we do as people have maybe a certain amount of energy output for the day per se, and love is one form of that energy. And if we haven't given it to ourselves and then we would like to give it to a partner, we may be limited in that way in terms of how we can express it, how much we can express it, because we haven't filled up our own cup first.
Exactly, yeah. And I really enjoy how you mentioned home. I'm not sure who said it, so sorry to the author. Like, home is where the heart is. And for me, the heart is really our essence, is our place of love, of that feeling. And when I think about the word love, for me, it really means being in my heart-centered true self.
Right.
And then inviting in a connection from my heart to my brain. And then from there, the actions can come. And when we have that disconnect, between our brain and our heart, sometimes it's hard to really, truly experience love. And when we can tune into that beautiful heart space and just allow that place of love, our true essence, it's really beautiful what happens. And if we just take baby steps, 5 seconds a day, 30 seconds a day to tune into the energy of love as a start.
That's a great point of taking time throughout the day to just tune into the energy of love. Like, I think that kind of ties into like the idea of self-care, things like that. Literal self-love, doing things throughout the day to show your self-love, to remind yourself that you're worthy of being loved. Absolutely. Oh yeah, I wanted to get your perspective kind of on something you were saying. So I think that a lot of the time people will get into states where they may be actively not seeking love in terms of like a romantic, intimate partnership type relationship for various kinds of reasons. And that may or may not be what's best for them. You know, it's for them to discern. But I think a lot of the times when people get into that, they might say, or others might say, oh, they're making head over heart decisions right now. So I kind of wanted to get your perspective on if do you think that's kind of a truth? Is that something that resonates when you think about it? And do you think that it's it's a positive path for someone to go in general in terms of making a head over heart decision? Because the way you explained it, like you said, like you kind of feel it in your heart, and then it translates into your brain, and then into your actions. So kind of want to get your take on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And that's really come with a lot of self inquiry for me with working with a lot of coaches. I think for a good part of my life, I was actually very much head centered versus heart centered,
Mm-hmm.
as many people are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like as children, primarily we start off as heart centered, being the expression
Mm-hmm.
of the essence of who we are,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
absolute love. And then we have different experiences and we
Mm-hmm.
go through different things, and then we kind of learn through society how to be more in our head, you know,
Yeah,
like use your brain type of thing
yeah,
versus use your heart.
yeah.
And so I do think that when we're head centered, head over heart, um, we're not, we can be in the essence of love. You know, we do still
Mm-hmm.
experience feelings of love from, you know, depending on our love language, from our physical senses, from
Mm-hmm.
things that we're believing to be true, and what we're believing to be true can create a feeling. You know,
Mm-hmm.
our point of focus can create that feeling of love in our heart. And I think when people primarily exist in a brain over heart, that might be a barrier that they've built against love.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
they're not allowing themselves to tune into the feeling and the expression of love and happiness. And it's just such a beautiful reminder, because so many people go through their lives completely in survival mode.
Yeah.
They don't even think that, say, like happiness or love is even a possibility, let alone
Yeah.
an active desire to say,
Mm-hmm.
how can I tune into the energy of this more?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just some people's reality.
Mm-hmm.
However, you know, the energy of love, as we've said before, is truly who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just an invitation for everybody right now to just take a moment and place one hand and the other over your heart. Just tune into this energy, you know, for a few minutes and or a few
Mm-hmm.
seconds even, and just notice how that feels to be in your true essence of love.
Yeah.
And if your brain kicks in and says, you know, like, oh, that's weird, you're definitely brain over heart in this moment.
Yeah.
And just being able to greet with whatever arises. I mean, we have so many thoughts as humans, we have so many sensations happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're really have learned, for the most part, to really be brain centered,
Mm-hmm.
to like think about things, to analyze things, and there's value in that for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And finding that balance of maybe sometimes it is important to be head centered and allowing that time and space to be heart centered as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, first, Adamly, I want to thank you for us taking those few seconds to center into the heart space. It's always good to do. Um, and I hope our listeners joined in, or maybe we'll take a few seconds, a few minutes to do that later today, however that resonates for you. Um, so something that I thought about when we were talking about that was how two very common phrases like in our society or are like, I'll think it over, or I'll think about it, versus like I'll feel it out. You know, like those are two
Right.
very common phrases, and I feel like I mean, I'm sure I've probably used them interchangeably. I think about them pretty much interchangeably. Um, I think that kind of ties into what you're talking about. I feel like whenever I've listened to very successful people talk in whatever walk of life it may be, they very often talk about using their intuition, using their gut feeling, just following how they feel for better or for worse, and that's what they stick with. But these are also people who are like, it's very important to do your homework, to know, what it is expected of you, to know what, goes on in whatever industry is happening, to stay up to date on things, so that when the time comes to make decisions, you can trust yourself, and I think that that's very important. There's people who are very successful because a lot of them, what made them successful was doing something they're passionate about, doing something that really resonates with them in their heart space, So I think that a large part of their success is finding that balance of like, I trust that my heart's in the right place. I know that I've done my homework. I know and can trust that my brain is going to lead me to the right decision because I've gone through the proper process. Does that kind of make sense to you? What do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that can be true for some people, and
Mm-hmm.
our predominant beliefs, which a belief is just the thought we keep thinking
Mm-hmm.
over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's usually backed up by
Mm-hmm.
people around us, by other people saying
Yeah, we
that.
accept it as our
Um,
reality.
right. And so the predominant belief that we have that we're acting upon,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's brain centered
Mm-hmm.
or heart centered, is what we're going to experience most in our life. And
Mm-hmm.
that would be one of those barriers. Again, is what we're believing to be true
Mm-hmm.
about ourselves, about actions that we're taking, about when you use ambition, what we're believing to be true that we'll get out of it,
Right.
like why we're doing the thing that we're doing, and examining that why are we doing the thing that we're
Right.
doing, why am I taking this action, why am I not taking this action,
Mm-hmm.
what am I wanting to gain, what am I wanting to feel, as Abraham Hicks says, like we only do anything ever because we think we're going to feel better in the having of it. We only want something because we think we're going to feel better in the having of it. And then it kind of comes after a feeling. We're really after a feeling from an action. And when we can tune into that feeling,
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting what arises, where we land with that.
Mm. Can you repeat that quote again for Abraham Hicks?
Sure. They say, we only want something because we think we're going to feel better in the having of it.
Yes. Okay. I think that's great. I really like that. I think that really speaks to like, yeah, like the materialistic culture we can get into. I think that we think that when we get the house, the car, the whatever, that's gonna make us happy. And I think that we're getting more to a place as a society where it's more about it's the journey that brought me happiness. But I think that even more so than that, I want to bring it back to kind of like that state of being. Like if you got all those things while being in a state that was undesirable, then you may have just programmed yourself over all those years or however long it took you to get those things to be in that undesirable state. And then once you have them, you might think, well, now I've got them, I'll be happy, I'll be joyful, whatever. But those things in of themselves are not joy. Joy is a state of being that you create within yourself.
Yeah.
And I think actually that's a perfect transition into I think the quote that I brought today, which is I know nothing of the Bible or Christianity, so for anybody if I'm misquoting this or I'm not quoting the most proper version, I apologize. But I believe this was. Let me make sure I got it. It was Isaiah like 57 or something, but it was no weapon formed against me shall prosper or prevail. And I heard that, funny enough, like on a TikTok the other day, just like scrolling through. But for some reason, it stuck in my head and kept resonating. And then it just kind of came to me like with my internal like monologue. It's like it said, it kept going. It was like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. No. Only weapons formed within you shall prosper.
Mm.
And yeah, for me, I think it ties really into like the barriers we're talking about. I think that there's no one can make you sad. No one can make you happy. No one can make you prideful. No one can make you joyful. No one can make you angry. Those are all conscious states you create within yourself. Obviously there is some level of reaction. We are biological beings, but then you get to choose how you respond to your emotional reaction. There's always a time lapse. Somebody says something, oh, I'm offended, oh, I'm angry. Do you act on now you have the opportunity to respond to it. How am I going to respond to it? Oh, someone said I look beautiful. That may make you sad. It may make you angry as opposed to joyful or happy as they may have intended. But the thing is, you created it within yourself, and so I think that we are the only ones who can create weapons or states of beings or things within ourselves that stop us from being able to prosper and to prevail in life.
Yeah, for sure. And there's definitely a lot to unpack here with this one. Um, and I think it's really good to just keep in mind that you and I practice that around like our choice of response, our choice of emotions. And for many people who haven't yet practiced that, they would say that's not a choice. They would say, that anger would not be a choice. It's just a physiological feeling that arises in their body.
Yeah.
And I would say that is true for some people, especially if somebody takes an action against somebody else that causes them physical pain, for instance, and they're experiencing pain in their body. However, how we choose to react to it after that is a choice.
Yes.
Do we choose to continue to focus on that? Do we choose to start our healing journey, after the physical pain has subsided? Can we choose to forgive people for our own self and for our own well-being at that point? And it also could really come down to a belief system. For me, I believe everything is working out for the highest and best good for myself and others. Somehow, some way that I don't know what it is, it is working out. And if you kind of come at it from that mindset, then no weapon against you can prosper because everything is somehow, some way unfolding. And I know that could be triggering for a lot of people that have traumatic experiences, and they're, like, how could this possibly be for my highest and best good? Right. And I don't know the answer. That's just my personal belief system. But it's where and I don't know the author of this, but where our attention goes, our focus goes, where our energy goes, is what we're focusing on. Where our focus goes, our energy goes. I've heard it said lots of different ways.
Yeah.
And if we're continuing to focus on that weapon, through law of attraction, saying like, it's harmful to me, this is going to hurt me, I'm creating, and then you're from that belief of the weapon, whatever that weapon might be,
right?
That's where your focus is. And and sometimes just saying like, I have no idea how in the world this is for me, but thank you.
Yeah.
It kind of shifts the perspective. And at that point, it's not a weapon forming against you that's prospering. You're prospering. And you're able to tune into your own innate inner power as the being created in the essence of love that you are. And love is really, really powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the idea that everything is always working out for us, for our highest good and for the highest good of others, is definitely something that I wouldn't say is a prevailing ideology quite yet. It's obviously it's gaining traction, thankfully. But yeah, I know, like, for me, when I was younger, hearing phrases like, oh, God works in mysterious ways. I'm like, well, that's a cop-out. That's a total cop out. Like, all right, that doesn't. What does that? What good does that do me? But you can replace God with the universe or whatever. But yeah, obviously, as I've come further on my journey, I kind of acknowledge that we have to accept that we have limited knowledge. We always have limited knowledge because we can't have infinite knowledge. But in terms of at any given moment, we only know how a situation has made us feel and how it has worked out for us in that very moment. I think that we can open our perspective and look on the bright side and things like that, but we never know how these events will tie into other events that may happen in the future that prove to truly be for our highest good. And I think that part of the reason I would say this resonates, at least for me, I think that the idea that something that is very traumatic or hurtful or very trying on our emotional, psychological selves, I think part of the reason it may be easy to be offended or triggered by the idea that, essentially it's all going to work out for you, this is in some way good for you, I think is because when those things happen, generally, I think people feel weak, and I think that I think they feel like they're lesser than. They don't feel worthy. They got treatment or an outcome they didn't want. They felt like they didn't deserve, but now maybe because they got it, they feel like that's what they deserve, but that's all they deserve. As opposed to feeling like a strong, confident, worthy person, and then so I think that maybe the brain, the ego kind of translates, oh, this is for your highest good, as opposed to hearing that. I feel like the ego may hear, you deserve this. And in the moment, it's like you don't want to believe that, maybe you do, but it still makes you angry because feel like your eternal self knows obviously you don't deserve anything that's not for your highest good. Right. But not knowing in the moment that something's not for your highest good makes you have that reaction.
Right. And, we certainly don't want to minimize any experiences that people are having.
No,
because
not at all.
So many people have very traumatic experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in it, in that moment, I have had trauma myself. Mm-hmm. And when you're in it, in that moment, it's not... It can be, if depending on where you are in your journey, you say like, okay, somehow, some way, this is happening for my highest and best good. Mm-hmm. But you may not be there. You may not even be like even remotely close to being there. And in that moment, you're going to feel all the emotions, all the feelings, all the thoughts, anything that's happening for you in that experience. And what my understanding is, like what Avi and I are talking about, is kind of like after the experience. Like, how do we start processing through it after that and trying to see the good? Maybe we can see it in the moment, and maybe not. And for many of us, we are not even close to being able to see it in the moment at all, especially when it's really traumatic or painful or, hurtful. And just being authentic with ourselves is really actually an act of self-love and self-care, is being truly authentic with yourself and just saying, I'm feeling 6,000 things right now, and each and every one of those is valid. And sometimes going into, a complete state of trauma, you may not even feel anything. You're totally in your fight or flight modality. But then when we can come into it afterwards, like, okay, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. That experience is not going to define who I am, because our essence is love, and coming into our true essence. Or maybe it does define people, and you can take it and turn it around into like a way of helping other people, or a way of powerful growth. Sometimes we grow out of the mud, as lotus flowers, like them, and we grow from these really hard, painful experiences that we can have. But looking at our whole lives, and how do we really become the people that we want to be, and not letting somebody else take that from us, if you will, or redefine us as opposed to us choosing our way of being and who we want to be. And lots of people are stuck in past trauma. Many people have had trauma. And thinking about, if I know this weapon against me can't prosper, what's the opposite of that? Like, how do I prosper? How do I flourish? How do I thrive? Not this weapon prospering, but me thriving.
Yes, shifting. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say, and even kind of thinking about, like, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. It's what I was saying is, like, how do I prosper? Kind of bringing the focus back onto yourself, not even the weapon at all. Because even if you're like, oh, that weapon's dead, that's still not actually focusing on what you want.
Right.
And what you want to feel and what you want to desire and what you want to experience and who you want to be. You're still focused on that thing over there. And sometimes it takes focus to heal. Sometimes we have to focus on it, but then eventually we can choose to come back to ourselves and say, okay, how do I prosper? What does prosperity look like for me?
Yeah, I agree. If you're still focusing on, how the weapon did not prosper, your energy is still going towards the weapon. I agree, and I think that, especially when you like kind of use weapon as synonymous with, like, let's say trauma, you do, or rather, let me say, it generally is highly beneficial to put some level of focus into trauma, how it affected you, how it continues to affect you, and what steps you can take towards, your healing process and, how you want to define yourself. I think that it's very easy to fall into a place of letting our traumas or our missteps or quote unquote failures define us. And I think that we should always be aware of how they are factually a part of what made us who we are and are always going to be a part of what makes us who we are. When you become the best version of yourself, all those experiences are still a part of you. It's just that instead of choosing to let those individual events and experiences define you, you rather define yourself as, someone who is resilient, who persevered, who has strength, and, someone who loves themselves and, things of that nature. I don't know if someone else may have said it first, but I heard it from Ralph Smart. He said, "You've survived 100% of the hardest experiences in your life. Every last one, everything that you thought was going to beat you, to break you, it was insufferable. You're still here, and you still have the chance to prosper and prevail. And it may take time. It may take a lot of time. I know that even for me, like, there's things that have happened in the past where, like, I don't know yet how this helped shape me, or, it still may upset me to this day. And sometimes I have to, if the thoughts come up, sometimes I have to sit with it. All right, this keeps coming up. Maybe it's reflecting in my behavior. Maybe there's a situation around me that is reminding me of it. How do I acknowledge this? But then I have to get away from it. And I think that I feel like a big part of what we're talking about can be found in conversations that people generally have with those who are much older, much seasoned, much more experienced in life, because they've gone through a life that may have had trials and tribulations, successes and failures, and then have had a significant amount of time to just sit back and reflect on it all and be like, well, it all brought me to the place that I'm at today. Or now, maybe it took 20, 30 years for a single experience to be like, well, it wasn't that big of a deal, or it was a big deal, but it shaped my perspective on life in this way. Or maybe it's like, this experience made me this kind of way for 10, 20, 30 years. I can't believe I let that happen. I don't want to be like that anymore. It takes time. And I think that this is what attracts people to two things like meditation and healing, and to things like psychedelics, because these are both things that can give you that outside perspective, those transcendent experiences, even though they may be fleeting, to acknowledge that those states of being are even possible. If you're constantly in a state of worry, fear, anxiety, survival mode, and you meditate and you only have, 3 full breaths of actually feeling at peace, you now know within yourself it's possible. And that can be life changing.
Exactly. And I just invite everybody right now to know that, just as Avi just said, healing is possible for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You do get to have it. It's moment by moment. Maybe it is those 3 seconds of deep breathing and meditation, or being at the gym, or something where you're just being fully present. Or maybe it's a different modality or a different choice. But it is possible for you, no matter what you've gone through, no matter what you've experienced. Healing is possible for you. Happiness is possible for you, or at least continued moments of happiness, and choosing to focus on that. And coming back to the quote, no weapon formed against me shall prosper. Asking whatever it is that you believe in, God, goddess, source creator, your inner guidance system, logic, if you're just a very logical thinker, how do I heal from this?
Yeah.
How do I start to, and what's on the other side of the healing? What are you seeking from the other side of healing? It usually would come down to peace, to love. What are you trying, what are you hoping to feel from being healed? Or equanimity, which would just be, in this kind of context, peace of mind. Peace of mind, because as you were saying earlier, it's really our inner world. It's our thoughts, or it could be like a memory of an experience that's creating a feeling, that's creating a body response. It's stored, stuck energy packets in the body that we can shift and release. And, this moment right here, whenever you're listening to this is the first moment of the rest of your life. Right here, right now. Like, who do you want to be? How do you want to feel? And what is coming through for you to help you get there?
Yeah. Yeah, every conscious moment is a chance for a new beginning. I heard that somewhere, but I think it's very true. Every conscious moment is a chance for a new beginning. And I think that's part of just like to waking up to the idea that you can heal, that you are worthy of happiness. And it may, for some people, may be a long, drawn out process to get to that place of realization. Some people, it'll just wake up one day and just kind of like that. That sick and tired of being sick and tired, just like, you know what? I can be happy. I do deserve happiness. I can take charge. I may not know how, but I'm going to do it. And then, going about that process. And I really like the way that you said, asking, whatever, form of belief system that you have, how do I go about this? I love the idea that you went from like gods, goddesses, inner guidance, intuition, and also like logic. I think that all of those, it allows people to realize there's many different ways to resonate with how you begin that process, how you go about it. And I personally don't believe that it's always going to be the same thing. I think for me, I got very into spirituality as I started my healing process. Just kind of like, what is there beyond what I'm always told? And then it went to philosophy. And then it kind of came back to a place of like, what you need. You just have to listen, to your, whether it's to your body or to your mind or to your heart, to your inner child. Like we're a very intelligent creature, but intelligence comes in all different forms. Intelligence is not just, oh, I'm good at math, I can build rockets, I can speak clearly and understand words. I think the most significant form of intelligence is the intelligence of, this is what I want and need to thrive. Anything beyond that is, it may be nice, but it's not essential.
Right. For sure. And I lost my thought. Oh, there it is. Okay. And awareness brings choice. Like, something drew you to this podcast, to this conversation.
Not here by accident.
Really powerful conversation. Something drew you here. Something made you say yes. Something, whether you are listening from the beginning or you're like, let me just randomly fast forward, because I'll do that. It's podcast.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is in this for me? What do I need to hear? I have 2 minutes,
Right.
and you're right now hearing this.
Yeah.
You know, something brought you here, and when we have that awareness that we do get to change, because oftentimes we're so stuck in our habitual ways of thinking. Like, our brain likes to regurgitate things over and over and over again. And then you just keep creating the same experiences because you keep believing it to be true. So you keep perceiving those things. And perception is so much of what we see in the world is our perception of that experience, whether we're conscious and aware that we're perceiving it and we're thinking continual thoughts about that experience, or we're kind of like, like I'm continuing to believe this to be true and it keeps showing up in my reality. That's kind of interesting. But when we have awareness that we can make a change, big or small, tiny, humongous, just a pivot, say, oh, let me, instead of focusing on this thing in front of me, let me focus on something I enjoy for 30 seconds, whatever that is. Maybe your kid's smile, maybe a flower, maybe an animal, maybe working out, something that brings you joy in that moment. Right. You've changed your experience. You physiologically changed how you feel in your body by thinking about something and imagining it either in the present or actually looking at it or touching it or smelling it or tasting it. And in that moment, you've changed your perception. And when you pivot back to whatever you're thinking about other than that, that's a new experience for you. It's a new scene in your life. It's a new experience. So when we have that awareness of choice, it helps us begin to pivot, to say, like, okay, what would I like to focus on right now? What would feel good to think about? What do I want? Why do I want it? What's here for me?
Right. Yeah, I think that awareness, I like that you use that word. I think that I'm hesitant to say that there's necessarily a goal to something like meditation or a psychedelic experience. I think that I would say there's kind of like a bubble of, very similar goals that are generally what someone may be seeking when they enter these kinds of realms. And I think that one of the most desirable outcomes is that awareness. I think that it can be, because at least for me, I thought, like, when I first started meditating, I was like, all right, this is supposed to, yes, but it's going to make me feel better. I sit here, I breathe, I think, and then, all right, whatever, I'll end up feeling better. And then I think what took me a long time to realize, and I think what is a struggle for a lot of people, at least for those who I've talked to, who we may have talked about how they're not feeling great, things like that, and I'm like, have you tried things like meditation? And what I've heard from a lot of people is, and also people who I know people who don't do any form of psychedelics or anything like that, or smoke marijuana, because they're like, I don't know, I get these weird thoughts that I don't like, or I think about bad things, and I'm like, that's kind of the point. That's kind of the point. You need to bring awareness to whatever is going on in your internal world that either needs to be shifted or purged. It's if when you're just alone with yourself and your thoughts, and I'm not saying it's something to do all the time. I think that's tough even for the most healed and successful, whatever. I think we do have a kind of a good balance as people of needing to be and needing to do. We're just naturally kind of doers to that degree. So unless you're a monk or something, just sitting there with your thoughts all day is a bit odd. But you should be able to do it for, at least a few moments, for a few minutes, for 5-10 minutes. If you can't do that without kind of being in a state of despair of having all these bad thoughts, then that means there's work to be done. And that's all that is supposed to happen. The awareness of there's work to be done. The awareness of I can be active in this process. I can take control.
And meditation can be a whole nother discussion and unpacking conversation.
Yeah.
But I just invite people, meditation, just, kind of quickly for the sake of time today and to be, honoring of everybody's time.
Mm-hmm.
It does not necessarily in any way, shape, or form mean sitting cross-legged.
Oh, no.
And finding wisdom mudra, thumb to index finger. Right. It could, but there's so many different forms of meditation. And for me, when I teach meditation, when I think about meditation, it's just tuning into ourselves. It's just taking a moment to connect with ourselves. And sometimes when we give ourselves that chance, and we put down our phones, although some people may find their phone to be meditative. They zone out with a game, or sometimes they zone in. They zoom in with something that allows them to just be with themselves. We get to, sometimes that's the only chance in the day that we've actually had to say oh, what is this thought? What's happening in my mind? And it's just a moment to just truly be with ourselves, whatever that looks like and arises in the moment. It could be crying, it could be laughing, it could be doing the dishes, it could be going for a walk, it could be petting your favorite animal, it could be connecting with another human. There's so many, many, many forms of meditation. It's just really being with yourself. And one of my teachers says, in order to have a clean kitchen, you have to do the dishes.
Yeah.
And that could be you get to choose to look at these thoughts that are coming through your mind. You get to choose to bring up a text that really irritated you to mind and say okay, I feel irritated about this. I feel annoyed. I feel sad. I feel mad. I feel frustrated. I feel hurt. I feel unheard. Whatever the emotion is, and then you're okay. And now it's done. I'm going to let that go when I'm ready. When I'm ready, I'm going to bless and release it, and say okay, it's done. Now how can I find peace in this moment, if that's what you're seeking, or whatever it is that you're seeking? Love, joy, peace, happiness,
motivation. Yeah. I think that I know I've definitely shifted from, and when I try and explain it to people when they ask me about these kinds of things, I say that it's less important to find some form of meditation as it is to find things you find meditative.
Exactly.
Because that can be anything for anyone. I think a good example is some professional athletes. Some of them really strive because when they do what they do, they get into this hyper state with their body, their mind, their spirit. Then that's part of why they love doing it. They like being in that state of really ramped up. So maybe nothing else does it for them, and they like being in that state. But there's also those where it's they do it, and they may do it at a really high level, but they could be just washing the dishes. They could be doing their taxes in terms of their demeanor and their internal state. It's just, for them, it's just it's just kind of what I do. I know for me, I really like something that most people would find tedious. Washing dishes is a great example. I actually love washing dishes. People are what? I'm I find it calming. I find it meditative. It's very simple. A lot of things in our life require thoughts and decisions and input from others, and it's just no, I just wash this dish, and then when I'm done, it feels like I've accomplished a task, and that's something that feels good to me. And it's if that feels meditative for me, I'm not going to wash dishes every time I feel upset, but it's about getting into that awareness of, I was kind of up in my head, but now I'm just washing dishes and it all kind of went away. I was up in my head, but then I listened to this kind of music and it all went away. Or I was doing yoga and I was able to realize, this thing that happened the other day made me more upset than I realized, because I was finally just not thinking about other things. Finding those experiences that work for you to be in a meditative state, even if it is just for a few seconds.
Right, exactly. And to me, meditative meditation or finding a meditative state is an act of self-love.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You are tuning into yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an act of self-love, whatever that looks and feels like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's an act of self-love. And, as householders, maybe we have some awesome monks or nuns or people that are like solitary listening to this. Mm-hmm. I don't know, it's available to everybody. But my guess is that most people who are tuning into this podcast today are householders.
Right.
And we are busy people. We are like abnormally busy people, most of us, many of us. Mm-hmm. Between like work and kids and household and these beautiful magic devices that we get to have to like create this, but it doesn't allow for presence. Many of us spend hours like scrolling through things kind of like mindlessly just numbing out as opposed to tuning in and feeling in, numbing out or feeling into it. And creating those moments of presence, just sitting for a moment and breathing is so powerful for you. It's so powerful for you, and it really shifts into your body and into your true self.
Yeah, I agree. I want to take a second to make a point that I think was really tough for a lot of people being as busy as they are, like running a household and everything and having to do all these types of things, work, career, children, all that. I think it's very common for people to feel like, well, I don't have time for self-care or for meditation or to exercise or all of these things. And to that, I say, and I've had to say this to myself, and I continually have to say this to myself, you don't have time, you make time. You can't go to the time store. You can't, you don't go out back into the garden and grow some time. No, you make time. You just like you made time to, go pick up your kid from school, or you made time to make dinner or whatever. You made time. You decided this is going to happen now or at this, time throughout the day. And for a lot of those things, like picking up your kid or making dinner or something, you make those non-negotiables. All other things will fall off of my list if I have to do this. And I think that with as much time as we do spend, like maybe mindlessly scrolling or something, we do have time. Even if you're going, if you're in the bathroom, brushing your teeth in the morning, take 15 seconds just to stand there. If that's all you can give yourself throughout the entire day, that's all you literally have time for. Because after 15 seconds, your kid comes busting through the door, mommy, daddy, I need this. All right, you've taken 15 seconds, and now you can build upon that, or at least be proud of the fact that I did give myself this little bit of self-love today.
Right. And yeah, there's so many beautiful gems in that. I mean, it's making time, it's choosing time. It's choosing things that are loving to ourselves. It's choosing things, maybe it's 15 seconds of saying thank you. Maybe it's smiling. Maybe it's saying, you know what? I'm just going to curl the corners of my mouth up for 2 seconds, 3 times today and see what happens.
Yeah.
And all we have is an exact moment. Time is pretend. It's like the next day in New Zealand. That's like early morning in Hawaii or whatever time you're watching it. Time's completely pretend. It's moment to moment, creating the life that we want to live and the feelings that we're seeking from that. And I hear that all the time. With clients. Oh, I don't have time. What choices are you making with how you spend your time?
Yeah.
Where can you create a few moments of self-love, self-care, whatever that looks and feels like to you. And just realizing that we're in habitual patterns, like we talked about before. We're mostly running through the same sequence of events, and we get to choose to create new patterns for ourselves. We get to say, actually, I am choosing me, and I am choosing a little bit more happiness in my life, and I am choosing to, maybe instead of watching, and maybe looking at where you are spending your time. What are you doing? Maybe you're watching the news for 20 minutes in the morning and that feels important to you. Maybe you could considering saying like, okay, let me watch the news for 10 minutes and then spend 10 minutes exercising or 10 minutes doing yoga or smiling or laughing or looking at something funny or uplifting or connecting with a loved one or going outside, whatever it is, just saying, where am I spending my time and what choices do I actually want to do around spending my time too.
Yeah, that kind of, that balance I think is super important. I know I'm constantly finding it for myself. That balance, always experimenting with new routines and things like that. Like for the longest time, I would maybe wake up and perform a certain activity, have a certain routine, listen to a certain kind of music, and then just one day I'll just be like, is this making me feel the way I want to feel? Is this making me happy? Am I enjoying this? And it may be as simple as, let me listen to or watch this sort of material after I've worked out. Or maybe I need to not work out in the morning. Maybe I need to work out in the evening. Maybe I need to just stretch or something in the morning. Kind of finding that balance of like, what do I need when I need it? And being okay with that. Like being super revved up for a workout, and it's like, you know what? I just want to chill on the couch and watch TV and eat some chips. Now, I think it's very easy to do that every time, but sometimes it's just like, you gotta really tune into your body. Do I just not want to work out, or is it like, do I actually need to rest? If you wake up after, working out hard 4 or 5 days in a row or something, it's like, I feel like crap. I just kind of want to lay down. Go lay down. If you feel like crap because you've been laying on the couch for the past 5 days, go get up.
Right. Examining the why. Why do I feel like crap? Do I feel like crap because I'm exhausted and I'm not feeling my best, and actually a nap is the act of self-love for me right now, or do I feel like crap because that's all I've been doing?
Yeah, exactly. Finding that balance.
So awesome. Well, kind of like wrapping it back up to our first quote, and another one that really came to me from Rumi also is, love is our core, our nature, and fear has built up these walls. And I think we've talked a lot about that through our conversation in different ways today, but love is our essence. Love is our core.
Yeah.
And, we just really invite you to tune into that. Tune into that and remember that you are love. You are love.
You are the essence of love. Love is endured through you.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else you want to leave us with? Do you want to do, any promotions, maybe where people can find you if they're interested in working with you after this experience, however you want to close it out?
Sure. Well, I am just launching my TikTok as we're filming this, so this is exciting. So
awesome.
It's Align to Joy on TikTok. And on Instagram, I'm align_to_joy. And on Facebook, it's Shula Stern, SHULASTERN. And, I have lots of opportunities available, different courses, as well as very limited space for private clients, if that's something that really resonates with you. And as well as online yoga classes. And I just want to leave you with coming back to our hands over our heart. Let's just tune in to the core of who we are and our essence for just a minute or so before we close out today. And if you do one thing or listen to one thing throughout this entire podcast, I invite you to do this.
All right.
Let's take a minute. Then the other over our heart. Fluttering your eyes closed or finding a soft focal point. If you're driving, please keep your eyes wide open. Just breathing in and out. Just feeling this connection to your heart chakra, your true self, your divine self, your highest self, whatever word or energy resonates with you. Breathing in and out. And then saying out loud or in your head, I choose love. I choose love.
I choose love.
I choose love. I am love.
I am love.
I am love. And I am lovable exactly as I am.
Mm-hmm.
I am lovable exactly as I am.
I am lovable exactly as I am.
Yes, you are. One more deep breath in and out. Staying here as long as you like, or releasing your hands and opening your eyes when you're ready. Well, thank you so much for having me, Avi. I appreciate it, and I'm just sending everybody lots of love, lights, and good energy today.
Thank you so much, Shula. Thank you so much for joining us and for that little meditation. I hope everybody enjoyed the podcast today. Shula, it's always a wonderful experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great time, everybody.